We are final from inside of Neville Arena. Auburn takes down Mississippi State 78-63. Welcome in War Eagle to everybody out there. Let's go ahead and get the conversation started. Appreciate everybody who is jumping in here with me. Your guy Ike Jones discussing Auburn versus Mississippi State. Auburn led wire to wire in this one. A good bounce back victory versus a team that plays really solid defense. You guys do me a favor. Go ahead and share. Please share the video, get some more people involved in here. I know there's a lot of Auburn sports going on right now, but make sure that you guys get the video out there so we can get everybody involved in the conversation who wants to talk about it. Appreciate you jumping in here. Again, Auburn takes down Mississippi State 78-63 inside of Neville Arena. 39 points in each half by Auburn. Very balanced game for the team half to half. Talked about this in the pregame about what Auburn needed to do as far as keeping Mississippi State out of their run game. Did a really good job. Did a really good job of doing that for the vast majority of the game. Only 10 turnovers for Auburn in this game. Forcing Mississippi State into 13 turnovers. And that's really what you have to do. The rebounding edge still goes to Mississippi State, but a lot closer in this one. Mississippi State still gets 14 offensive boards, which is kind of just their calling card. I say this on Twitter. It seems like a portion, and this is kind of very Texas A&M-ish, a portion of their offensive strategy is just get shots up on the rim and then go try to rebound it. It's not even really good shots. They're just taking shots and then going and trying to get the rebound, particularly when they get downhill. They just kind of throw stuff up and the shot blockers go over to try to bother the shot, and then you get the rebound from the big on the other side. So, one of those things that Auburn definitely has to be cognizant of in the way that they guard teams like this is just really kind of collapse down on the paint, and kind of have to work on their off-ball help defense a few times with the straight line drives that are happening a little bit more often right now to try to stick to shooters. But overall, listen, man, Auburn played a good game wire to wire in this one. Your leading scorer for Auburn, once again, is Janai Broome with 17 shots, 7 of 13, 1 of 2 from 3. Missed a couple of free throws in this game, but 6 boards in 25 minutes of action. Really good game from him. Another good game from Denver Jones, who had 15 points on 5 of 11 shooting. This is the Denver Jones I was expecting to see. A little bit more of him getting to his offensive stuff, a little bit more ball dominant. So he's higher usage now at this point in the season. So doing a good job. To continue to put pressure on defenses and knocking down the outside shot. 3 of 5 from 3 tonight. Really excellent shooting from him. Perfect from the free throw line. Added another 4 rebounds and an assist to his total there. And then next you have Jalen Williams, who had 10 points, and Baker Mazara, who had 10 points. We'll talk about Chad Baker Mazara in just a minute, but let's talk about Jay Will. This is one of the few games, though he was in double figures, where you didn't feel like Jay Will was really dominating out there, but Auburn still gets a double-digit victory, right? The blessing in disguise for this team might have been Jalen Williams having to sit out that Georgia game so they can figure out how to play offense through a couple of other people on this team. And now Auburn doesn't rely as much on Jay Will to be an offensive threat to be able to get victories. If you've been in here hearing me talk about this Auburn basketball team, you've heard me say, as Jalen Williams goes, so goes this Auburn team. That's not been the case now since Jay Will was down at Georgia. You've seen people like Chad Baker Mazara and Denver Jones and Cheney Johnson, who we'll talk about in just a minute, step up and be more effective for this team. And in his absence, they've had to rely on other people, and those people have continued to play good basketball, particularly on the offensive end. Now that Jay Will is back into the lineup, Jay Will can just be a guy who can step up. The only danger that you have there is, does Jay Will become passive now? Does he step away from being the aggressive guy that he was pre-injury, and you can't turn that back on? But if you have other guys who can come up here and be supplemental, and Jalen Williams can still be efficient, right? He only took 3 shots in this game, 1 of 3, but he hit all of his free throws, so he can still be efficient, and when he gets the ball, be effective. That's really what you need Jay Will to be, is be efficient and be effective. Double-digit scoring with just 3 shots. You love to see that. Jalen Williams doing a good job of being supplemental and helping out there. Next guy we'll talk about here is going to be Chad Baker Mazara. Chad, 10 points on 4 of 7 shooting in this game. 3 rebounds and 4 assists, but he had 4 turnovers. And this has really been the issue for me with Chad the last couple of games. I think he played much better offensively this game as far as not, taking crazy shots. I think most of the shots that he took tonight were good shots for him. But the turnovers have been high just on kind of like lazy passes or maybe just kind of being a little too fancy on some stuff. So that's kind of concerning. He just needs to stay within himself. And speaking of staying within himself, the tech that he got tonight was a frustration situation. And, the refs were kind of picking on him a little bit, if we're going to be honest. Like, the warning for him to not basically box a guy out or don't grab, this is kind of stuff that happens all the time. And Chad getting a warning for it, or it's going to be a tech, was kind of crazy. And then the foul call that they actually gave him was ridiculous. Like, it was not a foul call at all. Then he goes down there and he, plays the defensive possession with his hands behind his back, gives up the 3 to Hubbard, who is an amazing scorer. We'll talk about Josh Hubbard and his ability to just really be instant offense. It's crazy that he is a true freshman and he is just out there really punishing teams as far as his ability to shoot the basketball. But he gives up the contest, the 3 look with the late contest because he had his hands behind his back, and then he gets the tech call there. Frustration. He gets basically bear hugged there at the 3-quarter court, and he turns around and throws the basketball. Like, that's just kind of unnecessary stuff. And, that's the reason he fouls out in the game, because the tech is a personal foul as well. So he gets that foul, and then he gets the final foul call, which was, again, I think just one of those situations where it's like, hey, I'm just going to call a foul on this guy because it's him. Kind of an unnecessary situation there. So, he's got to be aware. And, there are people throughout the history of basketball who just need to be aware. The referees are looking for reasons to call stuff on you. And so you have to be a little bit smarter with how you play emotionally, because Chad is a very emotional player. So his emotions got the best of him at a couple of times there, but still a very good game from him. I think a bounce back offensive game for Chad. Next up, we'll talk about Cheney Johnson, who I think really has emerged for this team in his confidence and his ability to be able to be a supplemental scorer for the team. Knocked down 2 big threes in this game. If it hadn't been for the one shot that he goes in there and he tries to go up and under on, he'd have been perfect from the field in this game. The big dunk in the first half on the drive, you just see the athleticism of him rising up and getting that dunk there. Cheney Johnson has been really good for this team. And again, he's one of those guys. He is, to me, not quite as savvy as Chris Moore is as far as his hustle, but he's, to me, a guy where the stat sheet won't always show his contributions, but he's going to give you some very crucial minutes, and I love what he provides to this team from his energy, his athleticism, his hustle, and his ability to just knock down shots. He's a better offensive player than Chris Moore has shown himself to be in his time at Auburn already, and he gives you, I think, another layer of athleticism. He's just not as polished, I think, defensively in his ability to kind of be disruptive on the defensive end, but his athleticism allows him to make up for that. I love what Cheney Johnson is growing into for this basketball team, and look forward to him really continuing to progress, because it seems like every game he gets a little bit more confidence in his ability to step up and take and make shots, his ability to go one-on-one and post guys up. I'm seeing a lot more of that from Cheney. Love to see that from him. The last player that we'll talk about here before I get to your comments is going to be Lior Berman. I don't know what the exact issue or injury is for Lior. It didn't look good, but definitely thoughts and prayers with Lior Berman. That looked bad. Him going down on a non-contact situation and not able to get off of the floor and having to be helped off. So hopefully Lior is able to, hopefully it's not something serious. Maybe, I don't know what it is. I don't know if there's been any reports already. I'm sure someone's going to ask in the post game about it, but they'll probably have to get an MRI or something. So definitely thoughts with Lior Berman. A good guy. He had started to really kind of be a little bit more confident on the offensive end as well. He had knocked down a big 3 in this game. He was 1 of 2 from 3, 2 of 3 overall from the field with 5 points in this game. Provided some good hustle and energy that allowed you to be able to be more offensive and not have to play Chris Moore as heavy in minutes, but you can still be able to get good defensive energy. So Simo's going to have to step up again now for this team as he gets inserted back into the lineup with Lior being down for I don't know how long that's going to be. But yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about guard play here in just a minute, but I do want to get over into the comment section. And again, thank you all for coming and jumping in here. If you haven't shared the video already, go ahead and do that right now so we can get more people involved in this conversation. 48 ain't enough. This needs to be over 100 on the Auburn dub, baby. Let's make it happen. Let's see. Ben Bloodworth jumps in and says, War Eagle, that ref hated Chad Baker-Mazara. I do not disagree with you. He was not a fan of him. Tim the Toolman Taylor says, missed the game, but glad we won. Absolutely needed to go ahead and get this victory under your belt. Mississippi State, just kind of a feisty team, has not been great on the road. So this is a game you expect to win inside of Neville, but you still got to go out there and get the win. Mississippi State being feisty in the second half, trying to fight back, but Auburn staving off the runs that they made there. And again, Josh Hubbard just kind of ridiculous. I mean, let's look at his stat line here before I get back into these comments. Hubbard was 6 of 15, 6 of 11 from three. The man shot 11 threes for 23 points, 5 of 6 from the free throw line. He's just an absolute bucket out there. But glad to be able to just kind of hold off the comeback attempts there. Let's see here. JJ Brand says the refs had to have some attention in the second half. Yeah, it got kind of, I said this on Twitter. It seemed as if this was going the way of the Tennessee second half, where it was going to be whistles for every little thing. And it had gotten a little bit, silly. Now, again, it's not that the stuff wasn't fouls. It's just that those weren't fouls you were calling earlier in the game. If you're going to tighten the whistle up, fine, as long as you do it on both ends of the floor. And to the credit of the refs, they did. They did at least make it where it was, they were calling it the same way on both ends of the floor. You didn't see this wild inconsistency like you did for Tennessee. And when I say inconsistency, I don't mean inconsistency towards one team. I'm talking about what's a foul, right? And so outside of how they treated Chad, they were consistent in the way they were calling fouls on both ends of the floor. So I wasn't really upset with what the refs did, but it did seem like later in the game, they were like, all right, we're going to stop this from becoming a physical matchup, which actually favors Auburn as the team who's in the lead, as long as you just continue to, all right, cool. We're just not going to, play as intense out on the ball pressure out top. As long as you're going to continue to do that, then you're fine, right? You still got a couple of ticky-tack fouls in there, but nothing too dangerous for you. So wasn't completely upset at the refs in this game. It looked like it was going to get out of hand and did not. Let's see here. James Barnett jumps in, says, War Damn Eagle, glad we got the dub, but those refs were horrible. Yeah, man, listen, again, as long as it's consistent, I'm okay with it. I didn't hate what the refs were doing. I felt it was consistent. You got some of those same calls on the other end of the floor. You just have to adjust as a player and figure out this is how they're going to start calling the game. Let's see here. Kinsley Moore jumps in and says, love the way Denver is balling now. Denver looks like he's having fun out there now, man. Like, he's enjoying playing basketball. He's going out there and really starting to impact the game on both ends of the floor. I've talked about it earlier in the season. I love the way that Denver Jones has been playing defensively for this team, and I love the fact that he has embraced the idea that in order to get minutes for this basketball team, I have to be a good defensive player. He's been playing lights-out defense, and now the offense is starting to come as they're starting to look for him a little bit more, get the ball into his hands a little bit more often. So I am loving what I've been seeing from Denver Jones, confidently stepping up, shooting threes more consistently now for this team. Over the last couple of games, he's had some big three-point performances and a really good game for him again today. Kinsley says an interesting thing. I don't know if we aren't better without Jay Will in the starting lineup. I don't know that I agree that we're better without Jay Will. This statement, the truth or the false nature of this statement really comes down to how well Chad Baker-Mazara is going to play. Now, Chad was in the starting. I don't know that I like the starting lineup switching up so much where you've got Chad and Jay Will in there. I feel like you lose a little firepower coming off of the bench at your 3 spot with both of them in there, and you have Cheney Johnson still out. Like, I don't know that I loved that combination in the starting lineup. And so maybe they got to figure that out. But I think that the starting lineup for tonight maybe was a little weird for me. I don't know that we're a better team without him in the starting lineup. I think it's just really about the combination was a little awkward. So we'll see as they move forward whether or not they stick with the starting lineup that they had with inserting Jay Will back into here. I was actually surprised. If you listen to me in the pregame, I was surprised Jay Will was in the starting lineup again tonight. So looking forward to kind of seeing how they refigure out what the rotation is going to be, especially again considering the fact that you may not have LAUB Berman to insert into that rotation. So we'll see what happens with that situation and how Coach Pearl decides to handle everything in regard to the new rotation with Chris Moore. A good thing you do is you can go back to the bench for Chris Moore, even though he's not the offensive player that a LAUB Berman is, and you're going to get quality defense and hustle from him. So hopefully C-Mo can get out there and find his confidence again on offense now that the team probably needs him a little bit more. Let's see. What else do we have here? JJ Brand says Denver and Cheney will be super important in the tournament. I believe this wholeheartedly. Cheney Johnson's a guy who I think you need to be able to play quality minutes and do that without fouling. Let me look at his foul situation on the game. Only 2 personal fouls in this game for Cheney Johnson in 18 minutes. That's really good. Like, he's usually 3-4 fouls in by the 15-minute mark of his time on the floor. So for Cheney Johnson to come out there and do that, you love that. And then, again, the quality minutes he gave you in the first half are excellent. So want to see more of that from Cheney Johnson. Continue to play good basketball, heady basketball without getting into foul trouble, because you never know when you're going to need him to play heavier minutes, and you need him to be available with his fouls to be able to do that. So love the game that you got from Cheney Johnson. A really strong output from him. We haven't gotten into any of the plus minus stuff, but there wasn't a player on the floor or that was out there that had a negative plus minus for the team today. So excellent job by all accounts for everybody who touched the floor for Auburn. Don Cullen says, great win today, War Eagle. Agree with you, Don. Definitely a good win out there for the gentlemen in orange and blue. Let's see here. Another one from Don, who says, Cheney hit 2 threes, got some rebounds. I think he's going to be a big part of the team. I agree with this. He is going to play a factor out there. Let's go now and talk a little bit about the guard play in this game. When Jay Will is not going to be a big factor, then your guard play is the next place that you kind of look to as your signpost of how well Auburn played offensively. Aiden Holloway, again in this game, didn't take very many shots. He took 1 shot and missed it, and it was, I think, partially blocked, right? It was a layup going to the line. I think it was partially blocked, and that was an amazing rebound by Dylan off of that one to get the putback. But I'm okay with Aiden not shooting the ball a bunch if he's going to be efficient, right? Like, he only had 1 assist, 1 turnover, 1 personal foul. He wasn't out there trying to do too much. I'm okay with that from Aiden. But I think this was a bounce-back game from Trey Donaldson. Now, Trey wasn't out there scoring 15 points or anything like that. Only 4 points for Trey, but I liked the tempo with that both of the guards were playing with in this game. Usually I think that, sometimes Aiden's going a little too fast sometimes and gets ahead of his skis. I think he played a really paced game. And sometimes I feel like, Trey is playing a little too slow and he's going out there and kind of walking the ball up the floor. Trey was pushing the pace when he got the ball. He was forcing the issue. He was getting to his mid-range. I liked what I saw from Trey Donaldson on the basketball floor tonight. He was a guy with six assists. Make sure I have this correct. 6 assists in this game, no turnovers. That's the kind of basketball game you need from Trey Donaldson. Push the pace and tempo, play some good, solid defense. I mean, he had 3 personal fouls in this one. A couple of them a little ticky-tack, but, it's all right. And you push that pace, and then you make the teams have to guard you in the place where you're most dangerous, right? I think Trey Donaldson in the lane in that mid-range, he's most dangerous just because he's a little bit more of a threat to throw the lob over the top than some of the other guys who get into the lane, and he's got an effective mid-range game. I love seeing Trey Donaldson get downhill early in possessions to be able to put pressure on defenses to make them have to figure out how they're going to guard him. If they're going to sink back, he's going to stop. He's going to take his medium range, whether it's the pull-up J or the floater. If they're going to continue to guard press up on him, then he can drive the ball effectively and then look to get all the way to the rim or throw it over the top to a big. I love when I see Trey Donaldson do those things a little bit more often. He did that very effectively in this basketball game today. Great job. Good bounce back game, I think, for Trey Donaldson, who had been struggling a little bit in the last few games as far as what I felt like were effective minutes for him. Really good in his minutes tonight. 19 minutes. Again, only 4 points, but 6 assists with no turnovers is an awesome performance right there. Next up, we'll talk about KD Johnson off the bench, 1 of 4. KD wasn't a huge factor in this game. Missed a couple of open looks in this one that you hope that he's able to knock down a little more consistently as you get into teams that are a little bit more effective as far as being able to play offensively against Auburn. But I liked the energy that he came in the game with. Didn't play a lot of minutes, only 9 minutes in this game, but I think an effective 9 minutes for KD. Liked the game that he had. Again, only the one shot that went down, the three-pointer, the first one that he made in the corner there in the first half. So a good game from him. And we've already talked about Denver Jones as far as the other guard was effective in this game. So good game all around for Auburn. Love what you saw there. Just kind of some overall stats when you look at the comparison of the teams here. We already talked about the turnovers, but Auburn shot 50% from the field. So, listen, very efficient and effective. 47%, another plus 40% three-point shooting game for Auburn. That's 3 in a row where Auburn has shot the ball really well from 3. Listen, if this team is starting to heat up from 3, good luck. Right? Like, it's just, it's a team that if they can shoot in the 40% from 3, you're not going to run into Dalton Connects going for 39 every night, right? So it's going to take heroic efforts to defeat an Auburn basketball team that defends as well as this team does consistently to be able to beat them if they're going to shoot in the 40s from three-point land, right? So I liked the type of three-pointers that this team took tonight. They were not forcing the looks up. I mean, there was a couple of them where you're like, that's not necessarily a good shot, like the Denver Jones one. I think Chad took one from like 2 or 3 feet beyond the three-point line. That wasn't necessarily a great look. But overall, I liked the looks that they were getting from 3. They were coming out of effective ball movement, unselfish passing, inside-out play. Janai Broom's done a much better job, other than the kind of airmail one that he sent over to Aiden. Done a much better job of passing out of double teams this season, something that I was hoping that he would come into this year more effective with, stepping out and shooting the 3 ball more effectively. I mean, Janai tonight was 1 of 2 from 3. Both of the 3s were very makeable shots for him, so I like the selection of the 3s that he took. So love what I saw from him. Jay Will didn't make a three-pointer. Like, how many games has Auburn won this year where Jay Will didn't make a three-pointer and he played significant minutes? Again, another 22 minutes for him tonight. Yeah, how many times can you say that this season? Jay Will goes over from the three-point line and Auburn wins by double digits, right? Like, so this is a team that's adapting and learning how to play in different scenarios. Love to see that. Come back over here to the comment section and we'll get out of here in just a minute. But Damian Smith says announcers made a comment on Auburn having issues defensively when it comes to rotating and scrambling. What are your thoughts, Ike? I think every team, when you get them into scramble mode defensively, is a little bit less effective defensively. It's just kind of the nature of you move the basketball, you're going to be able to get good shots. That's why ball movement is forever undefeated in basketball as the effective way to break down defenses. It's a tougher proposition than just, hey, we got to move the ball. You got to be able to see it, right? And so what you need to be able to do against Auburn and really against any good defense, and I talked about this against Mississippi State and Tennessee, is you don't want to work out of their set defense, right? You want to be able to get the pace pushed up, get into your action early while Auburn's still trying to figure out who they've got and where they want to be, because your rotations are a little bit more difficult to come by. If you're going to come up and you're going to dribble the ball up lackadaisically, and then you're going to let Auburn get set and figure out and point out who they've got, and then they can decide, all right, this is who we're matched up and how we're going to match up, they're going to rotate a lot more effectively out of those types of situations than they do when you push the pace up and they're still trying to figure out where everybody is. And then you start not getting into one-on-one scenarios, but you're going to drive and you're going to effectively move the ball from one side of the floor to the other. That's going to be difficult. But again, that's literally any basketball team in America. There are very few teams that play effective secondary break defenses. And when I talk about the secondary break, I mean stuff that's not necessarily off live ball turnovers. Maybe it's a rebound and you push pace off of it. Maybe it is a live ball turnover, but it's one of those where like it's on the baseline and you save it. And so they've gotten an opportunity to get back, but you're going to get there and your fifth man or whatever the odd number is. So say it's 3 guys back defensively, but you got 4 offensive guys. You have the numbers, but you're not pushing it for a fast break layup. When you get into that secondary break scenario and the ball is already moving rapidly, that's when teams have to get into scramble mode, and that's where you get a little bit less effective. So, yeah, I think that is the case for most teams, and Auburn's not immune to that. So the effort there is against teams that effectively rebound so well as Mississippi State. You want to crash boards, but then when you do that, you become negative in your transition defense a little bit sometimes if you're devoting too many resources to that. But a good job of Mississippi State getting into their offense early and moving the ball a little bit better in the second half. And then when you got a guy like Josh Hubbard, who's as effective as he is off of the pick and roll game, where you have to either switch that and hedge to force the ball out of his hands, or you have to communicate it really well so that you're not giving up the drop back 3 from the big, dropping off of that. It makes it a little bit more difficult for you to be able to defend. But I think a good job overall for the vast majority of the game. Let's see here. Don Cullen jumps back in and says, how many 3-pointers per game did the Final Four team hit? They led the U.S. in threes that year. I am not the statistician with the history. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure somebody will go out there and get that number for you, Don, and we'll get that looked up for you. Glennis Curry asked the question, where does Auburn finish in the SEC standings? Looking for a 3 seed. At this point in time, it's kind of out of Auburn's hand where they finish without slipping up, right? You got to finish the season winning both of these last 2 games, both very winnable games. A Missouri team that has not played very effectively so far this season on the road. You need to go out there and handle business there. And then a Georgia team that you just beat, and you're getting them at home for the final game of the season. A team that doesn't play great on the road, doesn't play great defense. You should be able to win your final 2 games as far as on paper. So looking forward to see kind of what happens with the other teams, right? Because right now Auburn is 6th in the league, and they need to be able to get up into that first 4 in order to get the double bye. But they're going to need a little bit of help because the teams in front of them have to lose games, and you don't have the tiebreaker against anyone except for South Carolina. So you lose a tiebreaker with Kentucky right now if you finish even with them, which would put you down below them. So the top 4 teams right now in the SEC, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not looking at this right now, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. Again, I'm not actually looking at that, but since we're talking about it, let's go ahead and look at it so I don't have to sit here and guess about any of that stuff. But yeah, top 4 teams in the league right now are those mentioned. So again, you only have the tiebreaker against one of them. So you need South Carolina to lose to be even with you in order to get that tiebreaker, in order to get back up into that top 4. I don't think you have a chance at top 3 without Kentucky slipping up a couple of times. So, right now you're probably somewhere between 4 and 6 with needing a little bit of help if you win out. So we'll see. Don Cullen comes back and says, Auburn hit 123 in threes with 8 per game. Amazing statistic right there. Appreciate that, man. Kingsley jumps back in and says, Aiden and Trey are going to have to hit shots in the tourney. Trey's mid-range game for sure. Listen, you need your guards to play effectively in order to go far in the tournament. I just need you to be efficient as a guard. You don't necessarily have to be a scorer. But when you take shots, you need to be efficient in how you're doing it, and you need to take care of the basketball. Like I said, Trey only had 5 points tonight, but him having 6 assists with 0 turnovers, very efficient game for him. Aiden only took 1 shot. He didn't need to step out there and shoot a lot. There are going to be games where Aiden's going to need to step up and shoot threes and need to be big. It's really, for me, about guard play being smart and efficient, controlling the pace of the game. Big scoring guards aren't necessarily what you need. You need efficient guards that are going to handle the pace and make sure we're getting into the action that we want to. You're not turning the ball over a bunch, and you're controlling the other team's guards on the opposite end of the floor defensively. So just I need them to continue to be heady in how they're playing. I think they've played good games in these last couple. They need to continue that and get their momentum going into the final portions of this season. All right. Anyway, I appreciate you guys jumping in here. I wasn't going to be out here long. Listen, everybody's having a good time out here celebrating the win. I'm not sure where Auburn baseball is right now, but they won the first game in the doubleheader today. They had some work to do last time I looked, but hopefully they're doing all right out there. Before y'all get out of here, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the content with somebody. We'll be back at you with the weekend tailgate tomorrow, talking a little bit more about all things Auburn. But until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.